Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell movement.
Welcome to the Powell movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and welcome to 2025. Hopefully this year is a better year for all of us. This is season 9 of the podcast, and I'm going to start off by telling you about the deals I have for you this month. First, it's dry January. And while I'm not asking anyone to quit drinking for good, can you take a month off? Well, you can try it because B.A.S.E Brewing, one of my favorite sponsors, is offering you a deal. When you check out at bestdaybrewing.com, you enter the code POWELL20, that's a capital P-O-W-E-L-L, 20 with no spaces, at checkout, and you will get 20% off your B.A.S.E order. Stanley also has an amazing code that you can use at checkout. When you head on over to Stanley1913 and you go shopping and you check out, you use the code POWELL1913, that's a capital P-O-W-E-L-L, 1913 with no spaces, and that gets you Stanley's best deal anywhere. You get 30% off your entire Stanley order, and you can pour that B.A.S.E beer in one of those amazing Stanley pint glasses that I swear by. To take things a step further, when you use the code POWELL, that's just P-O-W-E-L-L, when you check out at the Insta360 camera site when you buy an X4 camera, you're going to get a free ski pole mount that you can use to film yourself drinking your B.A.S.E out of your Stanley pint glass. It's amazing, and I love having awesome sponsors. And I have a new one to kick off 2025 with. Ski Idaho is supporting the show, and I'm stoked. I'm currently working on a midwinter break trip over to Silver Mountain to shred all day and water park all night, and I'm excited about that because it looks so fun. But what I'm really excited about is my first episode of season 9. And I knew that High Fives athlete Rawe was going to be an incredible story, and holy crap did Jay deliver with a crazy tale that takes him from a base jumping injury to spinning sevens on his sit ski. I really loved this conversation, and when I got home to edit it, I realized that I must have had my mic set up wrong. I really should have taken an audio editing class before I started podcasting, but I didn't. The good news is, when I sent this episode over to Tom Moreno, who listens to the episodes before they go live, I asked him about the audio, and he was like, look, man, you're traveling, you're remote in a hotel, and while your sound may bother you, no one will care. It is fine. So I don't think you're going to mind the audio, and I think you're going to love this conversation. But before I get into it, I want to thank you for listening to this show for 9 whole years. My goal is to make it to 10 seasons and 500 episodes, and maybe further, but I don't know. And I couldn't do any of that without you. So thank you very much for listening. Also, I want to ask you to tell a friend about the show and review me wherever you listen. It does help the podcast grow. Finally, please support my incredible sponsors who make this show happen. They are Ski Idaho, Elan Skis, Outdoor Research, Stanley, B.A.S.E Brewing, and Insta360 Video. Now, it's time to kick off season 9 with Rawe. So you were born and raised in Florida, and that place is so interesting to me because of Florida Man, you know? And
yeah.
I'm curious to what Florida Man experiences that you've seen in your life in person that you're just like, holy shit, this would only happen in Florida.
Oh boy, I don't know about only happen in Florida, but we've had some weird stuff. You know, there's a lot of homeless people up in St. Pete, and you always like to help someone out, especially I'm handicapped. I see a guy handicapped, he's needing some help. So I'm like, hey, I don't have any money for you, but I see you jumping around on one leg. How about we go buy some crutches? So the dude, he's like, okay, sure, let's do it. So hops in the car, and we drive to this place, drive to that place, and finally realize, like, it's not going to happen. So I'm like, how about we just ship them to you? Because I'm like, all right, well, it can't be good just hopping around on this one leg. And throughout this process, the guy's sitting in the car, and things are starting to get crazier and crazier. We're like, man, this dude, like, he's a little wild. He's got some, like, really wild stories about beating people up and about fighting this guy over in this spot because he's, like, looking at him weird. And like, I need to get this guy out of the car as quick as possible. So I'm like, what's your address? He's like, we got to stop over here at this, weekly stay motel. And we get there, and the manager comes out immediately, starts yelling at him, get the fuck off the property. And the guy's like, fuck you, man. I need to get some shit shipped here. Like, fucking never come back. Never come back. Like, oh my God, who is this guy? What is going on? I'm like, I don't know that I need to do this anymore. So we get him out of the car. We end up shipping the stuff there. I have no idea if he got it or not, but that was like one little crazy thing that's happened to me recently in Florida.
That's amazing. That's exactly what I'm looking for one of these intro stories about a Florida man. You nailed it. And in thinking about growing up in Florida, did you grow up in one of those beautiful beach communities?
Yeah, I grew up just outside of Anna Maria Island in a town called Bradenton. It's just a small little town. They've got not a whole lot to do there, but we're like 10 minutes from the beach. So beautiful beach community. I spent lots of time out there as a kid growing up, and yeah, just hanging out in the beach town. It was fun.
And what do the folks do? I would figure if you live 10 minutes from the beach, you don't grow up poor, most likely. Is it like average or above lifestyle growing up?
Yeah, so when I was born, my mom was finishing med school. My dad was a manager at the Men's Warehouse. And when she became a doctor, she kind of pushed him to step it up a little bit. So he went to law school when I was a kid and became an attorney. So he worked for the state as a prosecutor growing up, and my mom was an ER doctor.
And it's probably good she was an ER doctor, because from what it sounds like, you were one of those kids that wanted to jump off every little thing they saw and just catch air off anything they saw without thinking about the consequences. Would that be fair to say?
100%. Yeah, I mean, I never really thought about the consequences just because I really thought that I could do it. No, this is going to work.
Yeah, that's how most people are, who like, when you look at a skateboarder or a rollerblader or anybody who doesn't wear a helmet, they don't wear a helmet because they're not going to hit their head. They're like, no, I'm going to land it. I don't need a helmet.
Yeah, and it doesn't look cool wearing a helmet. What, do you think you're going to fall on your head? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, that's debatable. We're here with the High Fives Foundation. They would argue that helmets are cool. You're part of that foundation.
I would actually argue the same thing today, but growing up as a kid, it was a fight to get my helmet on. I, in my base jumping accident, was thankfully wearing a helmet, and my buddy was not, and he suffered a TBI, whereas I did not, so I'm a firm believer in helmets.
Okay, so you saw the proof in the pudding right there, and that one accident right there.
Yeah.
And were there any injuries when you were growing up? I mean, were you hurting yourself, or is it just kid stuff?
Like, there was weird injuries. Like, when I was 2, my mom brought this, like, vial of some sort of surgical acid home, and she was unloading groceries from the car, and I managed to climb out of my car seat, find that bottle, open it up, and try to drink it, and spilled it all over myself. So I had gnarly burns all across my leg and a little bit on my finger where I opened it and spilled it on my finger. So that was like a weird accident.
Yeah.
And then I guess when I was like 5 or 6, my sister and I used to jump from the dresser to the bed and like bounce off the bed onto the toy box, which was in front of a plate glass window. And I ended up putting my hand through that. So I got some stitches, cut tendons in the wrist. And then the only other big one I can think of, man, I must have been like a teenager, just like 12 or 13, and was rappelling out of my tree fort. And I'd learned to like rappel upside down. So I got my grandma to come out and watch. My sister got my grandma. And yeah, I didn't get too hurt on that one. I just snapped the rope, fell on my head, and jumped up and ran off. I was thinking about that tree fort, though. I fell out of the tree fort when I was a kid. I was trying to climb down, and I had just been in the bayou, so I was wet. And I reached over for the first step and fell head first like 12 or 15 feet and broke my arm in half.
And so I guess that's maybe why your parents put you into gymnastics at an early age, to figure out how to fall, because they're like, this kid's going to be all over the place. We need him to be aware in the air and then to figure it out when he falls down.
Yeah, that plus burning off some of my energy. You know, I was running around, bouncing off walls and jumping off things. So they're like, we need to direct this a little bit.
And then when you think about it, there's a lot of kids that go from Florida to like Colorado for vacations and they ski and snowboard. Were you one of those kids doing that growing up?
Yeah. Like once a year we'd go and spend a couple days on the mountain. We went to Heavenly a few times.
Okay.
We went to Breckenridge, Steamboat, and would ski maybe a couple 2-3 days a year.
Okay.
But I was snowboarding mostly when I was doing that. I skied as a little kid and then moved on to snowboarding when I got older.
And then in the summer, were you skateboarding or BMX or anything like that as well?
Yeah. So I started off rollerblading and got really good at that. And then
I love that sport, by the way.
Dude, it's so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. As a kid, my grandparents had a motorhome, so we would travel every summer. And one summer we just did a skate park tour.
Oh, sick.
So we traveled all over the place and hit all these different parks. And actually we did that multiple summers, but one summer in particular, yeah, we went up to Canada, I want to say, and to Regina, Canada. And they had a skate competition going on, and I won the competition. And everybody's looking at us like, who is this guy? Because we're rolling up, like, staying outside in a motorhome, so they think I'm, like, touring, doing comps or something, but it was just a happenstance.
And then what other sports were you into? Like, when you were in high school, did you play any team sports, or was more individual stuff for you?
So I played, like, baseball and basketball and soccer growing up, and then in high school, I got into wrestling, and I was on the wrestling team for several years. That was amazing. It did a lot for me as far as like strength training and discipline goes and camaraderie. I've still got friends to this day that were on the wrestling team together.
And that sport seems like it's the hardest sport that there is to do. I mean, people will say soccer's hard or football because you're running for 90 minutes, but it seems like the 3 minutes on the mat are like some of the hardest things you can do in sport.
Yeah, it's crazy because as football season ends, wrestling season starts. So you get a lot of these football players that are coming in that think, oh yeah, I'm in the best shape of my life. And then they get on the mat and are gassed pretty quickly. So it's definitely physically demanding.
So you have those sports in high school, and while I don't want to talk about tragedy too early, I have to with you because it sounds like you were in a car accident in high school. I think someone might have passed in the car accident, and I don't know all the details, but what happened? Because you were like 16 years old, right?
Yeah, I actually wasn't in the car accident. It was a buddy of mine who was in the wrestling team. I think I was 16, yeah. And him and a friend left a party late, and they were driving over the bridge to get back to the island. And there's these little curbs that are maybe like 6-8 inches tall, and it looks like he hit one of the curbs, overcorrected, and drove off the bridge. And the car flipped up. They ended up landing upside down. He broke his neck, and the other kid, I don't even know what to say. Like it was like brain dead afterwards because he spent so much time underwater.
Okay.
But they got him out. My buddy had passed away pretty quickly there.
And at 16 years old, most of us don't experience anything like that. That's a really tough thing to grasp at that young. I mean, how were you able to do that? Those were your friends, right?
Yeah.
I mean, did that totally change you fundamentally as a person when you're 16 and that happens?
I don't know about fundamentally. I think it just introduced me to tragedy pretty early, which was maybe a good thing or a bad thing because, growing up in Bradenton, we were in the center of a pill epidemic, and I ended up losing a lot more friends pretty quickly after that.
And when you think about the pill epidemic and partying in Florida in general, I mean, was that a thing in high school when you were growing up? Are people boozing and taking pills and smoking weed and doing all that shit?
Yeah, I mean, it was easier for us to get pharmaceuticals than it was to get beer.
Because Florida was like the pill mill hub of the world, it seemed like. That's where you went if you wanted to be a fucking strung out pill guy.
Yeah, and at 16, 17, you really don't understand what you're doing. It's just like, oh, here, try this. It makes you feel good. So you don't understand how addictive it is, how dangerous it is. And it blew up really quickly, and I got sucked into it. Lots of my friends got sucked into it. Some of us were fortunate enough to get out, and others didn't make it,
And how were you able to turn that part around? Because, I mean, did it get really scary when you're 17 years old and you realize you got to change your life around?
Yeah, I mean, I was in and out of rehabs. My parents put me into inpatient and outpatient because my addiction got pretty bad.
Oh, so it's serious.
Yeah,
were you like stealing and stuff serious?
No, not quite that. I mean, I was fortunate enough to like always work. So like I would do landscaping and I always had money. My parents stopped giving me money after they figured out I was spending it on drugs.
Yeah.
So I pretty much had to earn everything. It didn't really click for me. Like it took a lot. I'd had some friends pass away and some relationships go bad that I was in a bad place. And I leaned into opiates pretty hard. So I was hanging out with some friends who were selling the pills, and a guy came in, was like trying to buy them, and they didn't have any that day. And I just was like, hey, I know a guy. So I brought him over somewhere else so that I could get a couple pills. And that guy turned out to be an undercover cop.
Oh,
and
wow.
So I ended up getting picked up for a felony and looking at 15 years for a sale of a controlled substance charge.
Holy shit.
And I got put into a diversionary program, drug court.
Okay.
And that was my wake up call. My grandparents were like, hey, you're coming to live with us. You're not having a cell phone. You don't have a car. Like, you're going to get up, you're going to go to work, you're going to go do this, you're going to go do that. So I made it through that program. It's a year-long program. I never failed a drug test. I never missed court. I never missed any of my meetings. We had to go to AA meetings, NA meetings, and I got a job bartending. I got another job waiting tables, and I also had some apartments that one of my grandpa's friends had helped me get into that him and I would fix up during the day, and I'd go work at night, and yeah, it turned my life around. I got into skydiving. I had money for the first time that I wasn't spending on drugs, so I found skydiving.
Is that kind of what replaced the drug use? Is like, I mean, it sounded like you always wanted to fly when you were growing up and stuff. And then when you find skydiving, is like the rush and the feeling that you get from that, does it almost replace what you're getting from drugs?
For me, skydiving was a stepping stone into base jumping. I always wanted to base jump because I could see the acrobatic aspect of it, being able to go, guerrilla style up on top of buildings and sneaking in and jumping off and doing flips and then open a parachute, fly away. I think that adrenaline aspect of it, of like the having to sneak around and do it without people finding out, that part really intrigued me. And to do that safely, you have to skydive. So they said you need 200 skydives before you can ever attempt to base jump. And I got started on that path. And through that, I met a lot of cool friends. I moved to St. Pete to be closer to one of them so that we could jump together. And then we all moved out to Twin Falls together to learn how to base jump.
And we will get into Twin Falls in a couple minutes. But when you're coming up and getting into skydiving and watching it, you're in Florida at this point, do you first go do a tandem and kind of get hooked into it? Like, holy shit, that was fucking incredible. I need to do this again and again.
Not exactly. Like, I first done a skydive when I was 15 years old.
Okay.
My family took a trip to Australia, and this is a funny story. My mom thought that you had to be 16 to jump. She's like, oh yeah, you can do this if they let you. So I thought you had to be 16 to jump as well, and we were doing a copy and paste exercise in my computer class. So I took a photo of my driver's license and I made a fake ID. And I didn't realize that the teacher was watching all of the computers. So I got caught doing that. I got suspended for 10 days. And when they pulled my mom in to tell her what I was doing, she's like, yeah, no, I know he's doing that. And they're like, do you know that that's a felony? And she's like, oh, I thought this was just a copy and paste assignment. So yeah, that almost got me in some serious trouble. Yeah, so I skydived at 15 in Australia with my mom. And when I went to learn how to skydive, they had the accelerated freefall program, the AFF program. And you do a 6 or 8 hour ground school, and then you get to go up and you jump with 2 instructors. So you have your own parachute, and you got one on one side and one on the other, and a radio on your chest. So after you open your parachute, you're by yourself.
Okay.
And then they fly down to the ground quickly, and then they coach you in, telling you where to turn, where to flare, making sure that you can have contact with them, or at least they have contact with you. And it went well, man. I loved it. So I just kept doing it.
And so that is your path to kind of get into base jumping, because that's the ultimate goal. Now, years back when Shane McConkey was alive, he had told me that he was going to death camp me into base jumping off the bridge.
Oh, nice.
And I had to write a letter to my parents first, telling them why I wanted to die, because that was part of this deal. It's like, you have to write this letter, you have to send it, but, you know, you're not going to die, dude. We're going to throw you off this bridge. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be the greatest day of your life. Unfortunately, a couple months after he told me and this guy, Mike Goot, that we were going to be doing this with him, he ended up passing away in his accident. And I was like, I'm never going to do that ever. I did go skydiving with one of his best friends just because I felt like I owed that to him. Mike Goot, who has never base jumped in his life, went to the bridge. Travis Pastrana was there that day. Miles and Travis threw Mike off the bridge. He almost went in the water. He was able to figure it out, and he did that in honor of Shane. Death camping is a thing, right?
It just depends on who you meet out there and what they're willing to do. I went out there with my girlfriend and with my 2 of my best friends and their girlfriends, and we were living out there for a while. She had maybe 25 skydives, and she wanted to jump off the bridge. So we basically told her, like, you can fly in, you don't have to turn, you can go straight, don't turn around. And she's like, okay, we'll do it. So we did that. That was a death camp for her, even though she had a few skydives. She really didn't know how to fly a canopy. And that's the hardest. I mean, it's easy to jump off the bridge. It's hard to land properly.
Sure.
So she ended up trying to turn too low and pound it in, and she didn't get hurt, but she didn't do it again. And you see that out there a lot. People will land in the water, which is a lot safer. You just fly straight in. There was a lady named Kathy out there who would drive a pontoon boat and pick people up and take them to the marina. So that's a safe way to do it. But yeah, you saw a fair bit of it. Never really went super well, though.
Right. So you had gone like 200 skydives when you were in Florida, and then you see this post on the internet or somewhere, just like, hey, need a couple roofers to come help build my roof. I will teach you how to base jump. And did you know who Miles Daisher was at that point? Or did you just stumble upon this thing?
So I knew a little bit about Miles, but I really didn't know like the extent of who he was.
Crazy he is and how much energy he has all the time.
And he's like that in real life. Like, that's who he is.
Crazy.
It's not a persona. Like, that dude is just like Red Bull in his veins.
Yeah.
Great energy, super nice guy. Just always like, yeah, what's up?
I was here when he jumped off this building with McConkey.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Yeah, my buddy Luke actually found that ad that Miles had put up. And Luke had experience as a roofer, and my buddy Channing had some experience. And I had done some roofing, but not like to the extent of what was necessary to be like a proper roofer.
Sure. But Miles is looking for someone to build his roof so he doesn't have to pay $17,000 to do it. He's like, I'll teach you my skill. Do you end up living at his house with his family?
Yeah.
It's time for my first sponsor break, and I'm excited to bring Ski Idaho into the sponsor mix. People have been shredding Idaho ski resorts for over 100 years. It's the home of some of the best skiing and resorts in the lower 48. Think 19 ski areas with epic terrain and shorter lift lines. That's right. Unlike a lot of places, when you ski in Idaho, that means you aren't going to spend half of your day waiting in lift lines. And Idaho skiing is affordable, with over half the ski areas offering day tickets for under $60. That's hard to beat, and between the terrain you're going to find at destination resorts like Sun Valley, Grand Targhee, Tamarack, Schweitzer, and Silver, or day areas like Lookout, Brundage, Bogus, Soldier, Kelly, Canyon, and Pebble Creek, from groomers and bumps and terrain parks to Powell and glades to backcountry, Idaho has it all, and it's the best kept secret in North American skiing. It's skiing like it used to be, with lots of independents, including mom and pops and nonprofits. To find out more, head on over to skiidaho.us. Next up, it's Elan Skis. And while I could tell you all about the new award-winning Ripstick ski models and then push you to demo them at your local shop, because they'll make you have more fun on the mountain? I'm just going to talk about your local shop. There's something special about stepping into your local ski shop. The smell of the freshly waxed skis, discussion about where to find the best skiing, and expert advice makes these shops more than just a place to buy gear. We at Elan believe that ski shops are the soul of skiing, a place where skiers can come together for genuine human connection. And that can't be replaced by going online. Going to a ski shop is an experience where you want to connect with a like-minded person who understands what you're wanting to do and wants to share their knowledge with you so you can have a good time doing something they love to do too. Shops are among the last authentic pieces of the ski community we have left. And here at Elan, we want you to support your local ski shop. You can find our list of dealers nationwide over at our website, elanskis.com, and remember, support your local ski shop. Last but not least this round is B.A.S.E Brewing. And with snow season here, skiers, snowboarders, weekend warriors, tubers, sledders, snowmobilers, snowbikers, you get it. The doers of winter are getting ready to shred. And post-shred, it's all about après. And this year, do après the right way. Forget about the calories, forget about the alcohol, forget about getting in trouble on the way home. Because with a beer from B.A.S.E Brewing, you get all the flavor of your favorite beer, whether it be a West Coast IPA, a hazy IPA, a Kolsch, an Electro Lime, or my new favorite flavor, Nature's Pills. And you don't have to worry about anything but having your best day ever. Blind taste tests have proven that you won't be able to taste the difference between a B.A.S.E and your favorite alcoholic beer. Really, the only difference is you're going to notice how good you feel in the morning after drinking a B.A.S.E, and you're also going to remember what you did last night, which is almost as refreshing as a B.A.S.E itself. So the next time you're at the store, pick up a 6-pack of B.A.S.E or order one on your next Alaska flight, or you can always buy some on Amazon or over at bestabrewing.com. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast.
Your girlfriends move out there with you too?
So at that point, me and my buddies hopped in a little like 3-seater pickup truck, and we drove up to his mom's house in Missouri, my buddy Luke's mom's house, and then we borrowed her Kia and drove the rest of the way. But we did the trip with like very minimal stopping.
Okay.
And I got out there, and the second we get out there, Miles was like, "Great to see you guys. You ready to go jump?" And we're like, yeah. He's like, "Cool, sign these waivers. Here's your parachute." We're like, "What the fuck is going on?"
Yeah.
And, you know, it feels almost like a death camp. He's like, "Yeah, we're going to do a pilot chute assist, and you're going to fly in, you make a turn." And it's like sundown, it's dusk, and we're just like, "Okay, cool, let's do this." And I just remember standing up there being like, wow, this is so insane right now.
And that's like the number one place in the world almost to do it. Like if you want to be safe, you go to Idaho, Twin Falls, and that's the spot.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you're looking down at it too, it looks pretty self-explanatory. I mean, it's a super long landing area. It's cleared out, it's flat. If you know how to fly a canopy, you're going to be pretty fine there.
So it takes a lot of the risk away. I mean, given there's always going to be risk, but it minimizes it a little bit. And when you're learning with a dude like Miles, who has so much energy and could probably run up and down and go all day long if you wanted to, you know, because he's that kind of guy. Like, what's the funniest Miles story that you have of just him having too much energy for his own good?
I don't know if I have any funny Miles stories. I feel like he's just like a funny guy in general. Like, we would jump off and some of his responses, like, I did a backflip and I over-rotated, and just him being like, "Oh!" He's like, "Ah, you did it, you made it." Like that kind of stuff. Just the casual, like, "Oh shit, he's alive." Like that kind of stuff was super funny.
And so do you stay with Miles for like 6-8 months, do as many jumps as you possibly can, or how does that work?
No, I think we were there for like 2 or 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
We were supposed to get it done a little quicker, but the person that did the estimate didn't have the right amount. So like we were short like several sheets of decking and a lot of shingles.
Okay.
And then by the time we went to get the shingles, the company was out of the ones that we had put on. So we had to like get creative and take some off of the end caps and finish the sides. And then we did like the ends with the new stuff so that it didn't look
all weird.
Yeah. So that was wild. So we got a few extra days in and got to jump a whole bunch.
How many times did you jump with Miles?
I think like 20, 15, 20 times. You know, we'd get up in the morning, we'd go jump, and then we'd work all day, and then we'd go jump at night.
Okay.
So it was pretty cool. And then some of the days it was like a little weathered out. Other days we were like too tired to go jump in the evening. So it was like, okay, well, let's get the morning one in.
When you're done with Miles, do you head back to Florida? And is it game on? Like you're going to find every building and antenna that you can possibly find to jump off of?
Kind of. none of us had parachutes at that point. So we had our skydiving gear and it was time to like buy the base rigs. Cause this really just happened like spur of the moment. It was like my buddy was drinking. He was online. He's like, oh my God, dude. Guys, I reached out to Miles. He said, bring them. So talking about us. So we basically just were like, oh shit, let's go. I had to let the jobs know that we wouldn't be there for a little while. But yeah, it ended up working out pretty quick. So when we got back, it was time to save up some money. Also, we were like, we need to move out to Twin Falls. So we're saving up money for our parachutes. We buy the parachutes and we're like saving up money for the move. And we had a couple friends that had parachutes. So every once in a while, we'd like go up to Tampa, watch them jump, go back and pack the parachute, and then one of us would jump. Or we could borrow another parachute so both of us would get to jump. We were getting after it.
But you're getting after it, and are you still just trying to earn money to get your own rig as well? I mean, how much do those cost? Like a couple grand?
Yeah, so the parachute it's been so long since I bought one, but I want to say my rig was like $1,200,
okay.
And then the parachute was like $2,000.
Okay.
And then you got to buy pilot chutes and other stuff like that, which are a couple $100. But I got some of that stuff used online, so I don't think I spent a ton of money. I think the most I spent was on the parachute.
Okay. And when you're base jumping a lot, before we talk about your life-changing event or anything like that, obviously risk is a huge thing. Fear has got to be a huge thing too. When you're on top of a huge antenna and you're looking down at 450 feet, is your heart pounding through your chest like you'd be on top of a line with tons of exposure? Or is it something that you feel like you have more control of because I don't know why?
There's certainly a lot of fear to battle. I mean, it's crazy. When you're standing at the bottom looking up at an antenna, it's usually at night. You've hopped a fence and crossed a field to get into this place. And you're like looking up at this thing and you're like, okay, cool, let's start climbing. And then you get on the ladder, and the higher up you get, the wind starts picking up a little bit. It's maybe, you're climbing very slowly away from the ground. Your hands start to get tired. Your legs are getting tired. You're like, oof, like this, how much further do we have to go? And then like nerves start setting in when you realize I'm high enough that if I fall, I'll die, but I'm not high enough to stop climbing so that I can jump. Like if I let go right now, or if I slip, I'm banging my head on all these rails going down. Like there's certainly like little weird things that your mind starts telling, oh, don't let go. Like, oh, watch out for what happens if this happens. It's like, yeah, it's not cool. But then you get to the top and tighten up your gear, and that's another aspect because now it's time to actually jump. Because up until that point, like you're like, I can still climb down.
Yeah.
There's that like part in your mind that's like, yeah, if I get up there and don't like what I see, I'll just climb down. But you almost never do.
How many times have you turned away, you think?
Only a few. We've turned away before climbing on certain things. There's like different types of pegs that poke out from antennas. So
okay.
Like, it's like on the corner, you'd have a peg going like they're facing 90 degrees away from each other. So your arms are awkwardly, like your wrists are turned in and your legs are turned out to try to like climb up this thing. And there's really nowhere to like stop and relax, and you're like fully exposed.
Okay.
So we've turned away from a couple of those. And then I've been on a tower where we were supposed to climb up like 800 feet, and we got to about 400 and the wind was cranking, and like it was really nice at the bottom, and we just realized we're like, we either climb down or we jump off here, and we're packed slather up, so it's like if we jump off here, it's going to maybe take the parachute a second to open, so like we really need to delay a little bit. The wind will help, but yeah, I mean, we jumped off that one and I had a full 180. But there was so much wind that I was just sitting still, not going towards the antenna. So I was able to turn it around. As soon as I turn it around, I'm screaming downhill.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a couple.
What's your closest call?
So I did a tweener at the bridge, which is where you take your pilot chute in your hand and you're standing on the rail. So my buddy was standing close to the center. Actually, the idea of this jump was so that we could proxy fly the terrain on the side of the hill.
Okay.
So we were out just far enough to be able to like open safely, but not have to turn in and lose a lot of altitude to get back close to the hillside.
Okay.
So I was the closest to the hill. And when I jumped to do the gainer, my backflip instinct kicked in. So I whipped my legs around and I was already done with the first flip. I didn't have time to throw the pilot chute. And if I had, I would have wrapped up.
Yeah.
So now I'm having to do a second flip. And I'm doing this second flip, and I've never done this before. And I just pitched the pilot chute between my legs and open up. And I was not super close to the ground, but way too close for comfort. And I was like, man, if I freaked out in this could have gone really, really bad. Had another one where I was learning how to do a gainer with a 360 followed by a backflip.
Okay.
And so I'm on the bridge over the water and I do the gainer and I don't do the 360. I do a 180. So now I'm doing a front flip. And with a front flip, you have to wait till a different point in the rotation to be able to pitch the pilot chute.
Okay.
And so by the time I got that second flip around, which was the opposite direction of the way that I was intending to spin, I pull the pilot chute and I see the water, and it's just so close. I think I opened maybe 50, 80 feet off the deck and didn't have time to snatch the toggles to try to flare in. I just landed right in the water. And it was like mid-October in Twin Falls, which is freezing cold. Luckily, Kathy was out there with the boat, but that day, it was actually on my birthday. I was like, well, my birthday was almost my death day, and I'm going to go get drunk now.
And thinking of that, when you're burning the candle on one end with all the base jumping and high risk behavior, I mean, it makes me think of like the Point Break guys who were like searching for the ultimate wave, but then they were also partying and living it up on the other side. Were you living like burning the candle from end to end, like going base jumping and stuff, but when you're done, you're going straight to the bar, high-fiving, telling stories with your friends?
Yeah, Twin Falls was basically, we were there for 8 months and it was a party every night. For a couple reasons. A, we like to drink and like to have a good time, but B, everybody that's coming out there from different places, they're all traveling, they're all on vacation. So after they get done jumping, they're all psyched, let's go have a few drinks. They're on vacation mode in a place where we live, which is similar to Florida in a lot of ways. There's always a party going on, but our house became like the magnet for people to come over and hang out at. So we had this like awesome little 2-story house. I think we paid $150 each per month for this place. It was like $600 or $800 for rent total. And the whole upstairs was just like this wide open wooden floor area that we were playing beer pong and just partying in. We were never getting like wild before jumping, but certainly afterwards. And what was the Outback Steakhouse was right in the parking lot. So if you did a base jump, you could go over to Outback, you buy a beer, you get a second one for a penny. So it made no sense to not do it.
Yeah, totally. For a penny. I mean, like, you might as well start drinking for that.
Yeah, and that was like the meetup hangout spot for a lot of base jumpers after jumping. So yeah, we were partying a bit.
And then how are you funding your life? Are you this dirtbag base jumper with money, or do you have jobs, or how does that work?
So we all got jobs in different places. I got a job at Johnny Carino's, which was like an Italian restaurant that's basically in the same parking lot. So I would base jump during the day, change in my car, and like drive across the parking lot to work. And I was just waiting tables, and I wasn't making very good money, but I made enough money to cover my $150 in rent, and then whatever beer, whatever food, whatever we needed. Plus, you get a lot of free food working there, and half off food. So it was an easy way to maintain. You're not saving anything, though. You're pretty much paycheck to paycheck.
I mean, you're pretty much living in a ski resort with the alcoholism and the adrenaline seeking all day long and making no money. It's the same type of thing, and people coming to live their vacation in your hometown. It's like that resort life, that Florida life, that Twin Falls life. It's all the same thing with just a different activity that's surrounded around.
Yeah, very much so.
And so then the activity in 2014 is when things go south for you, because you're back in Twin Falls. And I don't think you had done like a tandem base jump or like with 2 people base jump, or I don't even know really, but it doesn't seem like there was much planning to this one. It was like you and a buddy go, and like dude's like, hey, let's do this thing together. And you're just like, fuck it. Yeah, we'll do it. But I'm going to add a level of difficulty. I'm going to stand on your shoulders. I mean, it sounds really dumb to me. And it's easy to say that now because we're past a lot of tough times in your life. But was it just a stupid thing that you did that day?
Yeah, it was definitely that. I mean, I never really liked jumping with other people. For whatever reason, I never synced up with everyone properly. Like, there was a thing that we would do called a waterfall. And a waterfall is where you'd stand on the outside of the bridge. And if you have 4 people, let's see, the person to the left of you is holding your pilot chute. Sorry, the person to the right of you is holding your pilot chute. So if you all step off, you're all falling at the same time, but one pilot chute gets thrown. And then from that parachute opening, it pulls that next guy's pilot chute, which pulls the next guy's. So you'd end up pop, 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 all at different heights, and you'd be able to fly in and go and land and do it safely. But whenever I tried to do that, I, for whatever reason, was thinking that like I'd jump off and not just like step off like you're stepping off a curb.
Yeah.
And so that little bit of jump in one instance pulled my parachute, which I was supposed to be the low man. And now I end up being the middle man because the guy that was next to me ended up below me just off the takeoff. And then he pulled my parachute because of the way I jumped. You know, he had my pilot chute attached to my bridle, attached to the pins. When I jumped and he fell, it pulled my parachute out early. So now we're all flying in this like not really tangled mess, but like, yeah, pretty tight, very uncomfortable. And I just decided at that point, I'm like, you know what? I don't really want to jump with other people. unless like we're shooting video and someone's got like, they're jumping off and watching me, or I'm jumping off and watching them to get the shot. And even then you're doing it steps like pretty like decently far away from each other. And you've got pitch orders. So like if I take video, I'm going to pitch first. So when he was asking like, yeah, let's do a 2-way, let's do this, let's do that. Like, I didn't really know him very well. We were friends, but like we'd only jumped together a handful of times, and I knew myself, and I was like, I don't really want to get into a crazy situation. Finally, the day that we ended up doing this, I was feeling a little saucy. I like heeled off the handrails that day. We'd done a few awesome jumps.
Heeled? Like with the shoes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a pair of Heelys, and I don't know why. I was just like, I'm going to try to Heely across the handrail and then do a front flip out. And it worked. And I came in and flew down, and there's a little bridge, a little walkway at the bottom, and I Heelied across that, sliding into land. So like I was feeling pretty good. And he was like, hey, let's do a 2-way. And I didn't want to do it. So I was like, okay, let's do it. But how about I stand on your shoulders and like we'll do a stacked waterfall, like a totem pole waterfall, where I'll have my pilot chute in my hand and yours in my other hand. And when we fall, I'll pitch mine, it'll open my parachute, and then I'll pull yours and you'll open up beneath me and we'll fly in stacked. And he was just like, okay, let's do it. And I'm like, oh shit, we're going to do this. And then
that just comes together in like 30 seconds before you're going to jump, or like a couple minutes before.
Yeah. We were walking out to the bridge. So we're like under the bridge talking about this. And then I got excited and I was like, this could actually be really cool. So let's see if we can do this. Let's do what we call a dirt dive, where there's like an area that you can mock it up at before you get on the bridge that has the same handrail. So I was like, well, I'm going to stand on the handrail. You stand in front of me and let me see if I can just stand on your shoulders and how comfortable that is. And if you're comfortable with it, if I can stand up there for a second and get ready, we'll like mock this up. And if it works, it works. And so when I stepped on his shoulders, it was a little uncomfortable, but he was solid and he was standing still. He wasn't wobbling. And I was like, I think this could work. And my thought process was, if I fall off trying to get on his shoulders, I can always let go of his pilot chute. He's going to be standing on the bridge. I'll fall. I'll get some sort of like clean air to toss my pilot chute into out of a flip or whatever. I'll find a clear spot and I'm just base jumping. And if we go off together, then, we'll do the thing.
Yeah.
And I never really considered falling backwards, except for thinking that if I fall backwards, I can just jump onto the bridge.
Yeah.
So when we got out there, we did everything like we had mocked up, which was, the 30-second planning. And there's guys there holding him steady. I climb on. And when we did the countdown, I was leaning forward as far as I could without losing my balance, falling towards the canyon. And so he's like 3, 2, 1. And when he went to lean off, at that point, I should have leaned hard in, but I didn't know.
You've never done that before.
No. And so when he leaned forward, it caused me to lose my balance and fall backwards. And I jumped and I tried to land on the bridge. And when I jumped, I pushed him off. My leg wrapped his pilot chute and pulled his parachute. And my feet hit the handrail and didn't make it over the top. So I kind of like tucked my foot up underneath me, bounced off the diving board that he was standing on. My pilot chute comes out of my hand, wraps around my neck, and then it's just mayhem trying to uncurl this stuff. And I end up on my back inside of his open canopy because his parachute opened.
Yeah.
So I land in the corner of the canopy. It wraps around me. And I just remember thinking from there, I was like, I need to get out of here. And I kicked my feet over my head, and then I could see the ground. And I was like, oh, we're going to hit. And it was just like very emotionless thinking, like, do this, do that. This is what we got. So there wasn't time for fear in any of that, but we hit. And then I remember sitting upright, trying to catch my breath because I think I knocked the wind out of me. And then I must have blacked out again because next time I tried to sit up, my friends were there. Hey man, stay still. You're good. Like, we got people on the way. Don't move. And I could hear my buddy moaning beside me in pain. And it's just like, holy shit. Okay.
It's time for my second round of sponsors, and I'm starting this one out with Outdoor Research. Have you seen that black and white Mark Abma kit online or in the new MSP movie? If you haven't seen it yet, look them up before you buy your gear for this winter. They're sick. And not only are OR's products built differently and outperform just about anything thanks to being athlete and employee tested here in the brutal conditions of the Pacific Northwest, nowadays they have so much more style than the OR gear from just 10 years ago. When you bring in athletes like Mark Abma, Micah Evangelista, Zoe Atkin, Tom and Bass Van Steenbergen, and many more, and you have them sit down and work with designers and marketers, it's no wonder why the cuts and styles are looking a little bit different than that climbing-inspired OR gear that you used to see. It's really a game-changing difference in the fit and function of the gear, and the look, well, it really is incredible. And with the holidays right around the corner, get someone in your life the gift that will last over time. I can honestly say that I've loved OR since I bought my first raincoat from them back in 2000, and they truly make my ski days better. And while I may not be the best skier in the world, my outdoor research kit makes me look like a pro. And you can do the same thing by heading over to outdoorresearch.com, looking around the site, and treating yourself to the best. Next up, it's Insta360 Cameras. My new camera, my X4 from Insta360 Video, is totally game-changing. 360-degree video means you can't miss a shot. And the invisible selfie stick means that you won't be able to see anything in the way of that full 360-degree video. It's game-changing, it's incredible, and I get every angle of every shot that I take in up to 8K resolution, and I can take that footage and have it on my phone in the Insta360 app in no time, and it's ready to edit in an app that's super easy to use. If you haven't checked out Shaun White's latest edit, his Insta360 video, where he's got text dropped over all of the different tricks that he's doing, it is a totally futuristic thing that you can only do with this type of 360 video. It's why world-class resorts like Aspen Snowmass, Big White, Banff Sunshine Village, and Pacific Group Resorts, which include J Peak and some others, plus the PSIA, well, Insta360 is the official action cam of those resorts and groups. But really, that shouldn't matter to you. What should matter is how easy this camera is for you to use, how easy it is for you to edit, and what you can save by listening to this podcast. Because not only are you still going to be able to get that holiday deal they were offering, 15% off your camera order, but when you check out at Insta360.com and you get yourself an X4 camera, you're going to get yourself a free ski pole mount attachment when you enter the code Powell. That's Powell. The letter P is capitalized, and you're going to get all of that for being a loyal Powell Movement listener. So please enjoy that. My final sponsor is Stanley. And when Stanley started sponsoring this podcast, the story around the brand was that green bottle that keeps your grandpa's coffee hot. And that's still a story. But this week, they're totally changing the script. Actually, this year or the past few years, they're changing this script. And the latest big news around the brand is that they've signed B.A.S.E. The most famous soccer player in the world is part of the Stanley family. And while Stanley still sponsors me and Matchstick Productions, and most likely a snowboard movie that I don't know about, they've really matured as a brand over the years. I mean, they are the hottest or coldest cup in the world, and it feels like it. And it's still all about the product. Well, marketing with B.A.S.E. and Olivia sure does help things, but if you don't have a great product, the marketing doesn't matter. And since Stanley has consistently had the best cups and bottles to keep things hot or cold since they invented the category in 1913, you need to check out what they're doing. While I still swear by the pint glasses that I use every day, which could be a perfect Christmas gift for the man in your life, I see so many other people out there drinking with that quencher cup, which is so popular. And I get it. For some reason, it makes you drink so much more water, and that's awesome. Really, these days, Stanley has something for everyone. And I'm going to save you 30% on all of your Stanley purchases. How am I going to do that? Well, when you head over to Stanley1913.com and go shopping, then you check out, you want to enter the code Powell30, that's a capital Powell, no spaces, the number 30, and you'll save 30% on all Stanley gear. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast.
What's your pain level at? I mean, are you at a 10 right away? Are you in shock and kind of not feeling it?
I was in shock, and I got very fortunate. Like, I couldn't really feel my legs. I could, like, feel them, but I wasn't trying to move them because they were trying to keep me still. And, like, I don't remember being in much pain. I mean, pretty quickly when rescue teams got there, they injected us with some painkillers and got us onto the stretchers. And, you know, I ended up on a boat going down river, and my buddy got helivac'd because he was
more serious with TBI, right?
Yeah, they deemed him in worse conditions, so they were taking him to a bigger hospital over in Boise.
Okay.
I mean, I ended up going to the one right up at the top of the ridge, St. Luke's up there. So they floated me down the river to an ambulance and then right up to the top where the hospital was.
Do they get you into like an emergency surgery, or what happens from there? Like, what are the steps to get you on your way to recovery?
Yeah, I mean, the doctor immediately was like, hey, we're going to do some tests. I think the CAT scan, MRI. I mean, all this stuff's a little foggy because I was pretty doped up. And I just remember my tooth was clicking because I cracked a tooth. So it was like clicking in my mouth. My mouth was dry. I'm like trying to sneak water. They're like, no water.
Yeah.
They give you this little like foam popsicle. I was just like, can I dip it again? And my buddy was there, and the doc got the results from the test and was like, hey, listen, you've got a burst fracture on your L1. Your vertebrae is actually compressing your spinal cord, but it's not severed. So what we would like to do is get in there and get that off immediately so that your spinal cord will reinflate and you'll have like as much use of your lower extremities as possible. What do you want to do? And I was like, my mom's an emergency room doctor. Can you please call her?
Yeah.
And they're like, we're putting you in surgery right now. Because they know, like, whenever they call her, that's what she's going to say. And so she got the call, hadn't heard anything from me, got the call from them, letting them know, hey, your son's in the hospital. He's got this burst fracture. And she said she remembers just like, okay, yep, do the surgery. And then, like, as soon as she hung up, just like falling to her knees, like, basically, like, not losing consciousness, but like losing the ability to stand was just,
It's like a fucking really, really heavy thing to go through as a parent to like get that phone call.
Yeah, and she doesn't know anything else. She doesn't know what my mental state is. She doesn't know like if anything else is wrong, what I'm going to lose, what I'm going to gain back, what she's going to, because she ended up flying out there as like immediately, which it took her like 24 hours to get there because getting to Twin Falls is not an easy feat.
Yeah.
And, calling my uncle and my grandpa, hey, you guys might need to retrofit the house for a wheelchair. Like, I don't know what we're looking at here. And then she said she walked in and I'm like cracking jokes with my friends. Like nothing's wrong.
I mean, at that point, is it like you're not accepting your injury? You're kind of just like, everything's going to be okay. I just got to get through a couple months here. That sucked, but I'm going to be good. You're not willing to accept that something's really changed your life?
I don't know that it's unwilling to accept. In base jumping, you know that it's dangerous and you know that you could get really hurt and you know that you could possibly die. And like you do your best to mitigate all these things. And I even had a friend who was a wheelchair base jumper, Elan Skis, and it never crossed my mind that I could be paralyzed, So it wasn't something that I had ever really considered or like thought about. And when they told me that, you broke your back, I said, okay. They're like, yeah, we got the vertebrae off of there, the spinal cord reinflated. Okay, cool. Like I'm going to be back.
Yeah.
And they made me stand up and try to walk the next day. So like, I know my legs work. I know I can stand. I can't really move them that well, but I can move them.
So you had feeling already too, like where a lot of people don't have feeling right away and it might come back in a year. You knew that like I can put a pin in my leg and it hurts.
Yeah. There were certain areas that I couldn't feel, but it was like a nerve group that's going all the way down to my feet that nerve group was knocked out. So like in that area, you could stab it with a pin. I wouldn't feel it, but everywhere else I could feel little different sensations in different places. But yeah, I was pretty confident. And I think that, I was just like, oh, well, in 6 months recovery time, I'll be back to base jumping and I'll be running and, living the same life. And yeah, it was a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah. I would think from there, they have a really good hospital in Tampa. You get put there. And is that when you finally start accepting it and kind of go into a dark place where it's just like, oh shit, my life isn't going to be like I thought it was going to be?
No, it was ages after that. It took a long time. It took over a year for that depression to kind of come in because at that point, I'm crushing rehab. I did the inpatient there for a couple, 2-3 weeks, and my uncle lived right down the street. So I did outpatient living at his house for like a month or two. And I moved from a wheelchair to a walker, from a walker to a cane. So I'm seeing progress. Like I'm getting strength. I'm getting stuff back. I had no control over my bladder or bowels for a while. And then
that's like a huge deal for a lot of, that had to be the biggest win of your whole experience is like your first piss.
Yeah, that was a huge win. My uncle owned a bar and he took me out drinking and it was the first time I'd had any beer since my accident. So it's like a month and a half-ish after the accident. So we go out and we're hanging out and I'm like, hey, can you grab one of the catheters from the car? Because I had to cath every time. Yeah. So he grabbed one and I just walked in the bathroom and I remember standing there. Because every single time, like, I think that part of the refusal to believe stuff helped me out in a big way. Because I wasn't just accepting this and saying I'll never do this again. So I'm not trying. I'm like trying to train my body to do this stuff again. So every time I felt like I had to pee, I'd give it a good long try before being like, okay, catheter. And this time I remember standing next to the toilet, hand on the wall, just leaning over it. And I started going and I was like, what? Oh shit, it's here. It's happening.
That's amazing.
It was so crazy. And I remember walking back out and just slapping the unused bag on the table. And he looks at me, he's like, you can see the what is this? What's going on? Oh shit, you peed. And then
I see the joy in your face now telling it.
Oh, so cool. Dude, it was a huge moment. And it just kept happening. So he's like, more beer. My nephew just pissed. And everybody's like, what? They're like, he peed.
And so when you get these injuries, things can come back within like a year to 2 years, it sounds like, is like the window or something like that from a lot of people that I've talked to. It sounds like you're peeing within a month, which is a huge win. You're probably stuck where you are now, I feel like. I mean, maybe there's stuff that'll open up, but do you get a lot of movement back in that first year and a half?
Yeah, so it's crazy because I am still getting stuff back. I'm still getting like an activation in my left side glutes, which I haven't had for like 8 years.
Oh,
so,
wow.
You know, in the last year or two, I started feeling it a little bit. And like in the last several months, I started like feeling it more and more. So certain exercises, like certain squats, I can really like, I can feel that muscle, like that nerve firing. And it's like a burning sensation. But yeah, so the first year, I mean, I was just rolling through things and I keep seeing this progress. And then one day it plateaued. So I'm going to the gym every day, like 5-6 days a week. I'm like doing all the stuff right. My upper body's getting jacked, and my lower body, I'm just noticing that like after almost a year, I've only increased my weights, like the plates, by like 5 pounds on my left side, and my right side's getting like 10 or 15 pounds more. But like that's me pushing 10 pounds on my left side and like 25 on my right. So it gets disheartening putting all this work and effort into it and thinking, okay, cool, I'm gonna get there, I'm gonna get there. And then you just see, like, you look back over the year and like you try to put that next 5 on and you just can't move it. You're like, Jesus, dude, this is tough.
Yeah.
So I think when I realized like I wasn't getting anything extra, like it put me into a tailspin. Because I had already been, you know, hanging out with friends and drinking and doing stuff, but I really dove into it hard. I was like, well, don't need to go to the gym, you know, it's not doing anything. So there was a little bit of time where, you know, I just got pretty depressed and putting a smile on every day for everyone else, just because, you know, I don't like the pity. So I'd rather just smile and laugh and joke and everything's fine. But like inside it was getting bad.
You're just looking forward to when your friends get off work to go drink?
Yeah, I made a rule with myself, like, I wouldn't drink before 5, but
Okay.
at like 4:59, I had the bottle ready to like pour into the glass, you know.
Yeah. So you're white knuckling it till 5 every day?
Not all the time, but yeah, there was plenty of days that I can remember just sitting there being like, is 5 o'clock gonna roll around yet? Or like, do I have to like break into this early?
Yeah.
You know, and there's obviously days where people are day drinking where that wasn't the rule, but if I'm by myself, like I wasn't drinking before 5. Yeah, so after that, I ended up finding an acupuncturist, and the acupuncturist led me to a yoga instructor.
Okay.
And through doing yoga and acupuncture, I started noticing these little differences, little changes in my body. And I remember specifically in one of my yoga classes, she had this like table that you kind of lean over, you like bend over the table and grab onto these handles, and then you're kicking your legs backwards. So it's isolating your glutes and your hamstrings. And I remember kicking my right leg back, and I just felt this burn like in my glute, and I hadn't felt that in over a year, you know, like my glutes activating.
Yeah.
And I just remember being like, oh, this hurts, and then being like, yes, this is so good, because it means that it's there.
Yeah, it's working.
Yeah. And that was like a light bulb moment for me. It was like, okay, just keep doing it, keep doing the stuff, keep trying things. And my yoga instructor was pushing me to do stuff. She's like, oh, well, have you tried a cartwheel yet? And I was like, no, like I can barely walk. She's like, you can do a cartwheel. And I'm like, no. And she's like, no, you're doing one. So I did it, and I did this ugly cartwheel, but I made it over and back to my feet on both sides. And it like broke this, like, I don't know, this limiting belief that I was starting to build for myself that like, oh, I can't do that. You know, because I was saying that to a lot of stuff like, oh, it's going to take me a long time to walk over here. And when I get over there, I'm going to be in pain. So I don't want to do it.
Yeah, just making excuses for every single thing.
Yeah, everything. And it like broke that. You know, I started riding a bicycle. She taught me how to do handstands. I was doing like press handstands. My yoga got really good. My balance started getting good. I was activating these stabilizing muscles in my hips. You know, things were coming back, and it really kind of got me into like, I can do this type of thought process.
So you get yourself into a good headspace. I think this is around the time that your mom is suggesting that you go sit skiing, but you kind of brush that off like, it's not something I'm going to do. The next thing that you do is you road trip cross country, I think, with your girlfriend to go trim some weed. And while that sounds fun, or it sounds like a good way to make money, somewhere in that road trip is where you find sit skiing. How does it happen?
Yeah, so I'd seen videos. You know, my mom had showed me videos of people sit skiing, and it was only the videos of people getting steered down the hill.
Yeah.
And to me, I think, you know, pride and ego and you know, everything else got in the way, and was like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be steered down a hill. There's no freedom in this activity. It's just me asking someone to help me do something that I can't do myself.
Right.
And I definitely brushed it off for like over a year. And then one day, someone showed me a video of Josh Dueck doing a backflip.
Freedom chair.
Oh, yeah. And that just blew my mind. And I was like, whoa, okay. Let me look into this a little bit.
Yeah.
And we were visiting a buddy of mine who's living in Park City at the time. And we reached out to a couple of the programs out there. And it was last minute. You know, they had been skiing. And he's finally like, or my mom was finally like, hey, call everywhere. Do it. And my girlfriend's like, you have to do it, dude. We're here. Like, just try it. So we get a hold of the Wasatch Adaptive Sports over at Snowbird. And they're like, come up. If you can get up here today, we got a lesson for you. And they wouldn't let me pay or anything. Like, they just gave me this lesson. And immediately I took to it. I loved it. Like, I was doing good at it. I learned it like really quickly. They actually had to push me over at the end of the day because they're like, usually at this point, someone's fallen so we can teach them how to get back up. But like, you haven't fallen yet. So like, why don't you fall over on your side and we'll show you how to get back up. So, I mean, I was pumped. I was like, okay, this is something I can do.
That is so cool. And then did you hook up with the National Ability Center too?
Yeah. So we got back from the road trip and I looked at my girlfriend. I was like, do you want to go back out for a week and we ski? Like, we'll fly out and stay with my buddy and we'll go ski. So she was like, yeah, let's do it. So we flew out and I think it was National Ability Center. They rented me gear for like a week and I spent like five days sit skiing and just like really learning stuff. And by the end of it, like the stoke level was so high. I was like, I have to find a way to like do this more frequently.
So is that when you kind of make the decision that, like, hey, I'm going to pack up my whole life and just follow something that I love because there's not much I love right now, and this is it?
It was not quite then, but shortly after, my girlfriend had gotten into medical school, and she was getting ready to go down to the Caribbean, and we had talked about it. We're like, dude, there's nothing that I can do to make money in the Caribbean. There's no way that I could work. I'd have to be living off of your student loans. Like, I'm not going to come down there. I got to find something else.
Yeah.
And through that process, like, my friend had moved to California. I went out in the summer and was hanging out with him in July. And he's like, yeah, we just got done skiing last week. It's like, you skied from like November to July? And he's like, yep. And I was like, I'm doing it. Like, I'm going to move out here. So a couple months later, I packed up the car and drove to California and found a place.
So that starts like the next big chapter of your career. I mean, at this point, you're one of the most known sit skiers in the world. And we're going to not really talk about you getting good at sit skiing because that happened pretty quickly for you. I mean, given there's time learning, like everybody spends learning. But like you said, I would think with all the yoga you're doing, your core is so strong. It just helps everything that you're doing on your sit ski. You get to be really good. And when you look at it at that time, you have Josh out there who's inspiring people. But Josh, he was doing it for himself too, you know, to see that he could do this backflip and he could get back to his own world. But then you've got other dudes like Trevor Kennison, and where it seems like in your whole lifetime, you've kind of been doing it for the love of sport, and maybe you've never been looking for sponsorships or things like that. Trevor's taken a different route in his world of sit skiing, where he is like the super pro, sponsored by like 10 different brands, and has all this shit going for him. I mean, did you look to Trevor as someone that you wanted to emulate, or did you look to him as someone like, that's cool what he's doing, I'm going to take it in a different direction?
I don't know that I've looked at it in either way. I think that Trevor's badass, man.
Yeah.
I've got to ski with him a couple times, and just during those couple days, I felt like it was beneficial to me to be around someone that was ripping on a sit ski.
Yeah.
Because like I was hanging out with badass skiers, but I'm not able to like learn from them the same way, you know? So like watching Trevor ski and being able to ski with him, like we were doing different things, different tricks. And you start to like, you're like, okay, we could push each other back and forth. I think that this would be like a cool ski friendship. And the direction that he took, we've never really been able to link up after that and do anything together. But I'm like crazy stoked for him. I didn't think that there was a route to sponsorship. You know, I'm a Florida boy. I didn't think I'd be a pro skier.
Yeah.
I didn't think that what I was doing would get any recognition at all. Like I was just doing it because I liked it. And the way it's blown up from the 360s, the spins, the flips and stuff, like it changed my perspective in a way on it. I'm like, maybe I could do something with this professionally. But like I didn't really grow up in the Instagram world where
Sure.
like I only had an Instagram several years ago. And I wasn't posting much. So it's not natural to me promoting myself and putting this stuff out there. I'm like, I need to have a banger to put out there.
Sure.
You know, not like, oh man, I'm going to get coffee. Like, you should check out this place. Like, so I'm learning those things. And I think it's really cool. I've like gained the understanding of it that it's like, it's neat to be able to like follow the people that you like and see what they're doing and check in, you know, even from a friends and family standpoint that you don't get to see all the time. It's like, we're all busy. We've all got stuff going on. So like, yeah, let me just post my story.
Yeah. Well, when I think of Trevor skiing, I mean, he does some crazy stuff. You do some crazy stuff as well. His has been more flippy type stuff, which has been amazing. He had the double, which is insane. Yeah. But you're spinning your sit ski. And is there anybody else out there spinning sit skis?
I think a few people are trying. I'm not sure if people have landed. I think Trevor's landed a 3. I know that there's a couple people that are going after it.
But that's it's a consistent trick for you almost. I mean, you're not going to get it maybe 10 out of 10 times. But you've gotten to the point where you've got that rotation down, right? Yeah,
it's pretty stock at this point, which I'm grateful for. I'm going to try and push the 720 to get there. This year is kind of a big year for that because I've had some injuries the last few years. So one of them just kind of put me really in a headspace of like, oh man, if I got hurt falling off this little thing, like what am I doing out here doing this big stuff?
So are you starting to think about that now too? Of what the consequences could be? Because it seems like with any athlete I've ever dealt with, in your teens and 20s, you don't think about consequences, but as it gets a little bit older, you do.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to learn how to ride switch off of jumps, and I was going off of a jump that's less than knee high, so I didn't think that my thought process through the consequences of that is if I miss the jump, I don't go off the jump. If I hit the jump and I land and I can't get control of it, I fall sideways left or right. I'm not falling very far, it's not going to be like that crazy of a thing. So if I can ride switch off this, maybe I can go off a bigger jump switch and bigger jumps. And then when I hit the bamboo post, I looked over my shoulder, I saw the ones on the landing areas and I thought that they were the ones on the takeoff and I thought I was off my line. So I tracked literally right into the bamboo post and it kicked me up 6 feet in the air with my sit ski above my head. We're on boilerplate ice. It wasn't a day to be trying stuff.
Yeah.
And when I landed on my shoulder, it just collapsed and broke into 5 pieces, my clavicle. And that was one of those moments. It's insanely painful.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They're not fun.
Yeah.
And that much pain and off of that small of a thing, it just made me wonder, okay, am I getting away with stuff on some of these bigger jumps? Could I be getting really, really hurt? Or was this just a freak accident? So it got me in my head a little bit because the recovery time, it was February. I didn't get to ski again. And then now you're looking at almost a year later, you're getting on the snow, little timid, little hesitant. I missed out some opportunities. So I stayed, a little bit more cautious that year so that I wouldn't miss it again. I was supposed to go to the 9s that year for the first time and I missed it.
Yeah.
So now I'm do I even have this opportunity anymore?
But you did get to go to that event, I think twice, right?
I did. Yeah. Yeah. So that year, but I didn't push anything that year. And I noticed myself getting cautious and thinking about stuff in different ways, and it took me a little while to break out of that and be no, listen, you need to stop letting this fear hinder you and let it help you in a better way, help you to see the pitfalls of certain behaviors or certain tricks or certain jumps in certain areas, but don't let it stop you from attempting to do cool shit. It's not real, You could get hurt, but you could get hurt walking across the street
for sure. But you're spinning 720s on a sit ski that weighs 30 pounds.
Yeah.
And any kind of rotation, when you're coming off something, the torque that must go into that sit ski, not only can your body break, but I would think one wrong turn on that thing and the sit ski piece could break, and then you're out of skiing for a month waiting for a part to be made for you.
Yeah, that happened to me a couple times, but I was fortunate enough to, I've got a good relationship with the guy that makes these things.
You have a pro model, right? You're the only person in the world with a sit ski pro model with your signature on it, right?
Yeah, the signature model. We're coming out with a new one this year. We've been doing R&D for the last couple of years. So fortunately I've got a couple rigs right now, so it doesn't put me out for too long. But yeah, it's definitely a concern. My thing is with the spins, when I over rotated or under rotated the 7, I'm landing usually on slush. If I'm practicing learning new stuff, I'm doing it late season, and I'm tossing my body uphill so that I'm landing sliding downwards. I'm not catching an edge and slamming.
Yeah.
So I've learned how to fall. I think that being able to bail properly is a huge factor for this.
The body and sled saver, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I would think it's how much do these things cost? 4 or 5 grand?
Yeah, they can be upwards to $6.5, $7 grand.
And the whole thing with you is you're pushing the envelope. And I'm not going to make another comparison with Trevor, but I am a little bit. The Freeride World Tour gave you the opportunity to forerun it. They gave Trevor the opportunity to forerun it one year. But with Trevor, he had rules. It was you have to ski in this zone, and you can't do this, and you can't do this. For you, it was all right, it's all yours. Freeride World Tour. Do what you want with our course. Show us what you've got. Was that extra pressure on you when you get up top there, just being whoa, I've got this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I've got to perform for everyone?
Not really. I think the toughest part for me was that it snowed right before we got there, and it had been like you had pictures from previously where you could see all these little rocks and ice balls and everything that was like very visible, and now you've got a few inches of snow on top of that and it looks pristine, but you know that there's like danger right below.
Yeah.
And so the tough part for me with navigating that is that, you know, I've only got like 6 or 8 inches of fresh snow. My ski's sinking through it, and now whenever I'm making turns, I'm leaning into a turn as if it's a powder turn and there's ice right beneath. So it's just ripping the ski out from underneath me. So it made certain things a little tougher, but I did have a zone that I had to stay in. I had picked out a place and I kind of pitched it to Lonnie, the guy that was running it, and was like, hey, I want to do this. This is my thoughts. And he's like, I need you in this area. So last minute, like the night before, I had to change and pick out my new plan. So I think it went pretty well.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. And there's 2 more things I have to talk about before I get into my last segment. First would be at the end of your run there, when you get into the corral and everyone's cheering for you, or on any jump that you hit or cliff that you hit near a chairlift where anybody sees you, it's immediate explosion of cheers and stuff. You have to hear them. I mean, is it like you're scoring a touchdown in the 4th quarter every time you land something big? Because while able-bodied people will get that here and there, when someone sees you do it, it is so much more inspiring and incredible, and you have to feel that love.
Yeah, I do. But I also run with tunes, so I've got like headphones going. Okay. So when I'm doing that, like I really just kind of tune everything else out and then like get really into what I'm doing. And so that my focus isn't like distracted. I'm not like have a bunch of thoughts of like, oh, I can't mess this up. Everyone's going to see, or oh man, everyone's all psyched, or they're cheering, I need to go now, or anything like that. Like there's been a couple times where I haven't had the headphones in, where I've heard it and it's kind of psyched me out a little bit, but I've like been able to drop in and like dial it in. But yeah, I can often like afterwards hear them over the headphones, and I'm like,
yeah, that's got to be so cool.
It's super cool, man. I'm stoked that everyone else is stoked for it. It's fun for me. I don't really think that I deserve that much like praise and credit, because like I'm watching kids do like double backs off of stuff I'm straight airing. So like it's tough for me to like be like, yeah, that was rad, but like I'm stoked. You know?
Well, I mean, you can hear it from everyone else. They are stoked as well. The last thing that I meant to bring up earlier on, which I didn't, was you were in an MSP movie. You're in the big picture. And that, I think Gaffney calls you up and gets you in the movie. I don't think it was a sponsored thing in the beginning. It was just like, we have to get this kid in here because he's blowing people's minds. And when you look at everything that you've done in your ski career, I mean, would that be one of the highlights, if not the highlight? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but those big ski movies are what we all lived for growing up, and you're in one.
Yeah, man, that was such a huge honor. I had met Gaffney when I moved to town. I had heard about the Squallywood book.
Yeah.
And so I got it and realized that in the back, they show you there's like timestamps and like what the movie is for all these different, you know, it's basically like a climber's guide for skiing.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, if I can get this movie, I can go to this rock and I can see this from like the skier's perspective, or like understand what I'm looking at and be able to decide, is this something I can hit on the sit ski? So I reached out on Facebook and was like, hey, does anyone know where I can get copies of these? I'm looking for this movie, and this movie, and someone tagged Gaffney. And then he came over and met me and gave me a couple of the movies. And like, that's like the first time I met him and, you know, got to like chat about sit skiing and this and that. And from there, he said he kind of like loosely followed me, watching me, sees me around the park all the time and sees me around the mountain. And the day that I landed a combo, I did a 360 off of one jump and then a backflip off the next.
Yes.
Yeah, when I posted that, I was still at Boreal, and I get a phone call, and I just answer because it's on my headphones. And he's like, Jay, Scott Gaffney here. How's it going? And I was like, oh, what's up, man? How you doing?
Yeah.
And I like stopped what I was doing. And he was like, dude, we have to get you in a film. Like, I'm sending this to all the people at the company, and we'd love to get you in there. And when that thing materialized and like came to be, it was super cool, man. It was such an honor.
And I will say another famous friend of yours that I'm going to bring up, because I think the first time I saw your 720 was when Tanner Hall posted a clip of it. And I think he calls you brother. And are you tight with Tanner Hall as well?
We're not tight like that, man. But Tanner has had a huge impact on me. When I landed the 360, I had been trying the day before over at Alpine off of some of the smaller jumps.
Okay.
And I was under rotating. I was downhill slamming, like catch like 270 to like downhill edge slam. And you know, thankfully it was late season, it's soft, but it still sucked. And when I got to Squaw the next day, Tanner was there and he waited for me over at the gondola and we rode up together and we're talking. He did a bunch of stuff with high fives and he was just like, hey man, sit skier, I'm going to say what's up. And I told him I was trying the 3. And he's like, I got to see this.
Yeah.
And so, he saw what I was doing wrong, and he like helped coach me. Like, we rode the lift a few times and was like, hey man, try this next time, try this, speed this up, or you're throwing this a little too hard, just throw it a little softer. And when it came through, man, it was so crazy. And it was hugely in part to his advice. And like the stoke from that was wild, man. It was really cool. And then afterwards, we'd exchange contact info, and he hit me up and was like, hey, Armada is doing camp over at Boreal. I'd love for you to come up for the week. It's like a private camp, so you can just ski all the runs. And we hung out there for the whole week, and I was trying the 540 at that time. So him and I were just lapping back and forth. He was trying to do a pretzel, like I think a 180 pretzel. And this was years ago, so people weren't doing this stuff. It was like pretty wild watching him, the master at work. And yeah, I finally got that. And, right after I did that, he's like, man, you should just go back up and do the 7. And I'm like, yeah, you're crazy, dude. But I had over-rotated it a few times and almost basically did a 7. So, the next year it was on my hit list. And as I was getting ready to do it, I was reaching out to him like, hey, I'm going to go for it. He does 7s as a warm-up trick. First run just does these steezy laid-out 7s. Yeah. And I remember watching him doing it and thinking, like, that rotation could work for me on the sit ski because it would put me in a flat area to where I could see the ground coming back through.
A cork, kind of?
Yeah, so it's like the first one's a cork and then the second one's laid back.
Yep.
And so I asked him to send me over the video for that, and that's basically what I had in my mind of like, okay, this is what my rotation is going to look like, very similar. Watching body movement and figuring out how I could do that and like replicate it on the sit ski. And when I landed it, I sent it to him. He was all psyched.
Yeah, that was awesome. All right. Well, that is our podcast, but I have something that I end these podcasts with that I call Inappropriate Questions.
Okay.
And what I do is I get someone that to ask 3 questions, and they can be anything. And I was able to get a guy who was very important to you, but we didn't really talk about him that much in this podcast. We're here to celebrate him and his foundation this weekend. Well, Roy Tuscany started the High Fives Foundation, and he's a very important person in your life. And Roy came up with 3 inappropriate questions. I'm going to play the first one for you right now.
Rawe, what do you grow in your garden?
All right. What do you grow in your garden?
So in the garden, we got the standard carrots and corn. We got some lettuce and kale that we're growing. But the main thing is marijuana.
How much marijuana do you grow? Or can you even say that on the podcast?
Yeah, so I've got a 10,000 square foot licensed farm over in Mendocino. So we've got 8 greenhouses at the moment, growing quite a bit.
Gotcha. Like pounds upon pounds upon pounds?
Yeah, we do quite a bit.
And I mean, do you use weed as something to take care of pain? Like, are you still in pain from your injuries?
So I've been really fortunate to not be in a ton of pain. I pretty much use it sparingly with friends occasionally. I've got a cousin that I love to roll one with every once in a while. But yeah, for me, it didn't have the effect that it has for a lot of other folks. Like a lot of people with spinal cord injuries use it to sleep. They use it to mitigate pain. I think the biggest for me is CBD for pain, CBD ointments and creams, and CBD for sleep. But it weirdly sometimes will make it so that I can't pee. So it affects my nervous system in a certain way where it makes it very difficult to go to the bathroom. So I look at it and I'm like, man, this is fun, but also I like to be able to piss on my own. So maybe I'll just not do this all the time.
Yeah, no, it's a great reason for not smoking weed. That's question number 1. We'll jump into question number 2.
Are you doing the reverse Rob Gaffney, where he was a doctor? You're certainly not, but your lady is. So will you just have a sugar mama?
The reverse Rob Gaffney sugar mama. Well, that's the plan. We've been talking about that a lot. She's definitely the breadwinner. So we'll see, man. We'll see.
What do you have to do for work in life right now?
So right now I've got some real estate in Florida that I paid off a few years ago. So I've got some apartments and I'm hoping to do something professionally with skiing to earn a little bit of money. We'll see. We'll see where that goes. And then I've got a cannabis farm in Mendocino that I've been in the process of getting legalized and trying to come up with a couple of different brands off of that. So a couple different irons in the fire. Yeah.
All right. Nice. We will go with your final inappropriate question.
What is your best I pooped my pants story as a paraplegic?
Ooh, the best I pooped my pants story as a paraplegic. Huh. The most recent one, I was hanging out with my mom and my aunt and we're like telling jokes and I was sitting on the corner of the couch. My aunt's sitting on the couch and she said something funny and I just started laughing super hard and I shit my pants. And I look at her and she looks at me. She's like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "I don't think so." I got up and ran out of the room, went to the bathroom, and sure enough, man, I just shit my pants. like through my pants. It was not just like, it was like a...
Like slime?
Yeah, it was gnarly. So I did a little outfit change and came back out and was like, we might need to clean that couch.
That was Inappropriate Questions. That's our podcast. And, I hate that you had to go through so much pain and suffering to get where you are today. It's not fair, but you, like a lot of people I know, have taken your injury, and sure, you got down for a little bit and you were depressed, but eventually you spun that into a positive, and you turned your whole life around to where you are living in a place right now that people dream of living in. Given it would be better if you didn't have any pain in your legs and all that shit, but either way, you've done a full 180 in your life, and you've made it to where you're a pro skier. You've got this amazing girlfriend. You've got a life that you can't even really dream of, but it's happening. And it all could have been taken away with a stupid base jumping accident, but it didn't. And now you're living the life that you've always should be living. So I appreciate you giving me the time and telling me your story, and have a good day.
Thank you, Mike. Sick, dude. That was fun.
Yeah.
So that was time with Jay Rawe, and what a rad dude that guy is. I mean, Jay had to go through so much. Addiction, the injury, and a lot of those things are really hard to talk about. But Jay Rawe wasn't guarded at all, and he's such a cool person and huge talent. Hopefully Jay will figure out how to navigate the whole sponsor world of skiing and get paid to send it. That said, money or not, Jay Rawe will continue to push the envelope on his sit ski, and that's going to create some amazing content for all of us to enjoy. It's going to be exciting to see what he puts together this season. That's the podcast. At this point, I want to thank you for listening and ask you to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen, share my social posts, do all the things that help keep this show growing. If you need stickers, I also work at diecutstickers.com, and you can message me at mike.powell@diecutstickers.com, and I will get you the best pricing on stickers, tents, or whatever you need. You can also send me guest suggestions there too. I'll take them at that email. It doesn't matter. Finally, I want to ask you again to support my incredible sponsors who make this show happen. They are Ski Idaho, Elan Skis, Outdoor Research, Stanley, Best Day Brewing, and Insta360 Video. Have a great week, everyone.